Tesla challenges the whole car industry, and then Polestar, when they get out, I mean, like they have sold something to me which is clearly going to be over-the-air updates. Yeah. Do you think they had that the first couple of months? No, I mean, like they were needing to push to launch the car and all that in Corona times. So even the car is not ready. So the over-the-air updates started to work like 2-3 months into I had the car. I had one of the early cars. But it's an interesting thing because it tells us, number one, Tesla has pushed the whole car industry to what is a given standard, and I won't settle for anything less. And secondly, it's not that easily copied, apparently, right?
You know, what do you think about the Polestar versus Tesla? I guess you've ridden a Tesla as well, so you can compare it.
Oh, this is a good one. And for me, the Polestar, I mean, like in many ways, the rational buy is it depends on what criteria you work, but for many criteria, the Tesla would win. Simply because it's more, from a software perspective and how the whole infrastructure or ecosystem works, the whole experience is superior, right? With the charging stations and everything like this. But Polestar, to me, for me, it's bottom line. I didn't find the model I wanted. I mean, like I didn't want the Model S. I wanted more something like the Model 3. But I really want the hatchback. So it's sort of very, very pragmatic things turned me to the Polestar, and then I love the design of the Polestar. I mean, like design always puts people in different corners, right? Either you like it or you don't like it. I kind of like that design. So not really rational anymore, right?
We should be rather proud that we have in Sweden. You know,
I think it's
the biggest contender, I would say, to Tesla at least, right?
Yeah,
or what do you think, Nima?
Yeah, I think that's from an feature perspective. Yeah, there are really cool stuff that the. I'm more proud of the fact that, as you say, it's like a Swedish, and you have all the Swedish experience and the Orderfors and all of that kind of experience. But it's not a Tesla.
No, it's not a Tesla. Thank God.
But
I would love to. You want to match race.
Yeah, we can race.
We can do that. We can race afterwards. Yeah.
And Polestar doesn't have FSD, right?
Yes.
But you actually bought that, right?
Add that component into this. Honestly, I didn't know it from the beginning, and I had there was some initial version of it, and then you could add some additional top on, and then.
Could you please explain what
is FSD?
Yeah, what is FSD?
This is this autonomous driving capability.
What does FSD stand for? I know what it is, but I don't know what the acronym stands for.
Full self-driving?
Yeah, full straight. Yes.
Is it or full self-driving?
Full self-driving. Yeah. And I think there is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 levels defined. What is really full service driving?
Yeah. And this then needs to be understood in the context that the feature set of the Tesla car evolves over time with the on-air updates. So they sell you as we are going along, we will be more and more autonomous. And if you want to future-proof your car from the beginning, you pay this up front. Yeah. And the feature set of FSD in the beginning was quite limited, and now it's more and more.
It's growing, it's growing.
Have you experienced the maturity growing? Because I think they made some major leaps over time.
They have. I think one of the things that actually kind of saved my life is one of these. And it sounds funny when you say my life. I used to drive to Norrtälje, and with all the kids yelling in the background, and Norrtälje E18 you can go quite fast if you like, when the police is not there, and you're trying to. What do you call it? Get off the attention from the kids in the background, and hitting you and yelling in the background, and try to drive. And sometimes you start to drift to another lane.
You're looking more back than forward.
Yeah, because you're losing attention. Do like that. And what happens then is that the Tesla has this inbuilt capability of not only kind of you are driving off, but actually then it returns back.
Right.
So that's the kind of small nudges they will do to bring it in the right direction, and you can actually put that, please just nudge me, or actually,
steer me.
Yeah. So that was one of the things, and then you have all of this, things that auto park for yourself. Honestly, never tried it because I don't dare.
And the whole summon the car.
Yeah,
have you used it?
No, you're not gonna use that. Honestly, it's really cool to have it, but where would you dare to do that? in Kungsholmen, where I tried to park.
Why not? I mean, if you have it parked, a street down, from your port, couldn't you simply use it?
Do you know? Have you seen our streets? It's like in the winter, it's like 2 meters snow front in the back, and in between is every second car is like a bag of this, constructions.
Yeah.
So I think I've actually tried sometimes to see. The sensitivity of the sensors to see how would that react, and that's like sometimes it's smart, sometimes it's less smart to say it like that. So that's the cool part. I mean there are other more practical stuff like these sensors that feel when the windshields goes off and on. And going back to, and I think talked about this before, and it's like I got an update over there, and it told me that now we have actually analyzed 2.5 million pictures of raindrops in our deep learning model, and now we have applied that, so it's going to be more sensitive.
That's cool.
And that is actually cool. I mean, and I'm sometimes thinking what I'm trying to do in the bank, trying to make the parallels.
But one of the best features that I enjoyed the most in the Polestar I have right now is that it has adaptive headlights. Maybe it is not so very fancy, but the whole idea that when you drive at night and you're completely on full beam the whole time, and then basically feeling, the headlights basically moves when the car comes and starts taking it away from the other car and then back again. I think that is quite cool.
Especially if you want to drive, distances, but there's a lot of those things happening, and you want to, and it's getting darker. Yeah. But things like when you drive on Essingen and there's a lot of traffic, the whole thing that you put it on the automatic and then it drives for itself, because that's stopping, and then you can put in the sensitivity of now this truck tries to jump in, and it actually stops very quickly. Yeah. So that kind of things. But I mean, it's a user experience.
Yeah. But what about the FSD? You have to talk a bit more. Did you try it? What do you think about it?
Yeah, I mean, I've tried it before getting the car in some sort of a simulation-like environment, and it is cool. It is interesting. It's more interesting actually. You look at it from outside because it really feels like if someone actually sitting there behind and experience it. A normal driver, a human being. When you're inside, maybe it's me, but you can't really relax fully. It's not like you see sometimes on YouTube and you're going to sleep.
Be a bit more practical. I mean, normal lane keeping you can do without FSD. What does FSD actually add to the previous version that you didn't have before?
I think there's different things. There's the fact that you can actually drive around and you will route it. You will tell it like, I want to go from point A to point B.
But is that allowed even in Sweden to do that?
No. Hence the reason why I don't try it.
So if you were to get into an accident, you would be liable, I guess.
Yeah. I've always kind of dreamed about that. Sometimes when I drive too fast on E18, if a car, if the police stops me, can I say? I mean, I was on autopilot. What would be the reaction there?
Let Elon Musk pay.
There is double fine. But there is a pretty cool YouTube video if you Google it. The first autonomous drive, I think it's from LA to San Francisco or from something like that. It's sped up, so you can see the car moving. And Elon Musk is talking about the roadmap and what they are planning. So it's some sort of investor meeting where basically he's playing the video and basically. Traffic, city traffic, highway traffic, fully autonomous.
That is the intention of the capability.
So technology, and he then in this video talks about now we're down to the level to where the algorithm is looking for what they call drivable space. So basically, when you do lane key, when you're in heavy traffic, switching lanes, what is the safe distance you need to have around you? And so, I don't know. So they're getting quite sophisticated on this.
No, it's
cool.
I think one thing that intrigues me about Tesla is it's not about necessarily the car or the experience now. It's the fact that I want to be somewhere in a position where I can be part of this technical revolution.
Yes.
So I don't want to be on a stage or, and talk about it and, sit behind a laptop and writing a piece of code.
That's fun as well.
Yeah, that's fun as well. It was a long time ago I did that, to be honest. But I want to be part of that actual implementation of technology.
Or using
I agree.
it. So.
Yeah.
Using it. And basically, to experience it will give you a completely different picture of how it actually works. I mean, like the simple fact to have an electric car and then drive a long distance, you know, if you go skiing in Åre and all that. And I can tell that the first people who's been working on the product launches around the infrastructure, they didn't own electric cars. I can tell you that much, because the fundamental things that is not really so, well, you need to drive to Åre 2 times and then you realize that was not really smart the way they did that. I wonder how many millions they burnt on this.
Cool. Yeah. We
So
always
you need to use the tech in order to be part of it.
True.
We always get stuck at Elon Musk and never get out of that rabbit hole. But let's park that discussion. I'm sure we get back to it many times later this night. But before we do that, who is Nima Ghorbani and how will you describe?
Wait.
Sorry, what?
Wait.
Oh, of course. Sorry, Goran, go for it first.
We need to present him on the right way, right?
Yeah.
Tell us this story, Nima. So who is Nima Ghorbani? We'll get a superstar. How do we end up here?
Yeah, that's. Do you want a long story or the short one? No, I mean I can. So it is actually. I'm a ghetto kid.
Yeah.
So moved. My parents moved from Iran to Sweden due to my father's work, and then we ended up in Skultuna.
Yeah.
Do you know? Anders doesn't even know where that is.
I have no idea.
It is like 15 kilometers outside of Västerås. It's Skultuna Mässingsbruk.
Yeah, you have your allt möjligt.
Yeah, allt möjligt. Yeah, you have this your
Cufflinks.
And it is a place of cultural clash. When you come from Tehran, it's like 10 million people, a lot of people, a lot of crazy noises around you. You land in Stockholm and then you drive all the way to Västerås, then to Skultuna on a rainy April, and everything is green outside, right? Yeah. And I haven't seen that much green in my life, coming from Iran. So I then end up in there, and then my father takes us out for a walk because he was here a bit before, and then we'd start talking about that. Where are all the people?
Exactly.
There's like 5,000 people living at that point in time when I came to Sweden. So I was like, where is all the people?
10 million in Tehran.
Yeah. I mean, here is like 5,000 people. And what you have in Västerås or in Skultuna? In Skultuna, you have 2 streets, literally, in a cross. Yeah. And then at one end, you had that point in time, and I was looking at it early 90s. You have ICA, and you had Konsum. And that's it. So it's like, what happens? Where is the rest? It's like that's a question you get, I guess.
In Systembolaget?
No. Oh my God, no Systembolaget there.
Go to Västerås.
What was the definition of a city?
Yeah, I know.
If they have a Systembolaget, then it's a city.
Yeah.
But to fast forward, so that was like my Swedish experience to begin with, and then it was, and then my I was like, this can't be it. I mean, we kind of need to go somewhere where there's actually people. And then I eventually ended up in Stockholm. I was supposed to be a football player,
That's your first passion.
That's my biggest passion. Yeah, that's the side that haven't left you yet. Yeah. If you wake up one night and have a dream, that's
the real job.
Yeah, that's a real job.
Which club?
Which club? Exactly.
Come on.
Hammarby.
No, international. Okay, Hammarby.
International, I would say.
You look like a real guy.
No. Actually, I'm actually a Zlatanist, I usually say.
Oh. Yeah.
So I actually go where he is because I like his character.
I like that, Zlatanist. I'm going to be a Zlatanist.
Yeah.
Sounds horrible, but
yeah. So anyway, but anyway, fast forward. I mean, ended up because I was going to play soccer in a football academy. My father got a job in Stockholm, and then we moved into ghetto. Hence the song. And the ghetto was Farsta, and now people's gonna, shout.
No,
the Farsta guys from not. You're a ghetto guy then.
Yeah. Well, my girlfriend lives there, but yeah.
Yeah, no, but I mean, Farsta, and it was Farsta Strand, which is the nicer part of the ghetto of Farsta, at the end of the tunnelbanan, and with regards to ghetto, you sit there and you have a dinner in a nice house or apartment. And it's 4 PM, just as an experience of the ghetto, is that we have a park, and green Volvo My father was proud of to bought outside, parked. And while we are eating, 4 p.m., the guy is trying to break into the car. Yeah, and I was like, is he supposed to do that? So my father, he goes down, and then Farsta was of course known for, I don't know that for.
Excuse me, you need to come back when it's darker. It's not good enough.
Yeah, it was a little bit like that. It was like surreal.
4 p.m. Come on, really? We haven't even had dinner.
Yeah, at least a bit later. Come on, give us a little bit more credit, So that was the ghetto story, and then fast forwarding again in gymnasium, Norra Real, moving into here.
Yeah, then you said that you're basically walking outside the studio, or the office, on your way to school.
Yeah,
this is your home turf.
This is my home turf, and the whole cultural clash of everyone in my class were the son of the Riksbankschefen or the mother of some big lawyer here, and then we come from a still educated background, but living in Farsta. Yeah. So that was one of the other clashes in the story of my life, and and since I still felt quite proud for where I came from and the whole ghetto, because I think it influenced me to work harder and not taking anything for granted, that kind of stuck to it, and hence the ghetto superstar. Yeah. But moving very quickly then, football, soccer, gymnasium, going to university, ended up in KTH. Industrial economy, because I didn't know what I was going to be.
So take something where you can go anywhere.
Yeah, that was my father said. But I was, of course, again, turned out to be the black sheep of the family, because if you come from Iran, you know what that is.
Doctor,
that is
lawyer.
Doctor, dentist.
Yeah. I wanted to say dentist. Dentist is a very big important thing.
So because whenever they call back home to Iran to brag about their kids, it's like, grandma, you know what your grandson has become? No? He's an industrial economist, engineer kind of thing. I was like, what is that? He's not a doctor?
Give me something I can understand.
Yeah, so is that it? Or engineer? You could go with engineer. So I started turning off the engineer, and then that actually led to the fact that I started computer science, and then started the communicationssystem.
And what year was this approximately?
I graduated in 2000. I graduated from gymnasium 2000. I started the KTH the same year, because the whole idea of also that you go out on these backpacking trips 2 years, I was like, No, you go to KTH. That's where you're supposed to go. So then I was like 5 years at KTH, doing communication systems. There also was an interest into the business applications, and so there was marketing, quite a lot of marketing with communication systems. Interesting combo. One day you're studying all of this, how to program network switches, and for telecom, and then the second day is like
consumer
behavior, and the 4 Ps and all of that sort of concept. Yeah. But that also led me to, I ended up in Texas, in Austin.
Oh, yeah, you did part of your university.
Yeah, I got some sort of a scholarship, and that was a whole other experience. I don't know if you have time to talk about that, but if you guys, I can share a few highlights. I was there the same.
We don't have any limitations, so please go.
No.
Yeah. No, but one of the funny parts is that I actually went there the same year. There was. There had been the past year. There was been this 9/11. So I was going the year after that one.
Was it
2011, right?
11.
Yeah, 2011. So I think I was there 2012 or something like that. Just about.
I was there a week before 2011, 9/11 actually. So I went home like a
it's
few days.
It's so a long time ago. It feels so. Is 9/11? Is that 2007? That must be the dumbest comment in a long time.
Yes.
But I mean, that's okay. That's okay.
I own it.
That's fine. Yeah. So I was there, and the whole process of actually getting a visa to get there, because you have an Iranian background, that's a whole another story. But actually I got there, and this is Austin. So Austin is the capital of Texas, also hometown of George Bush, the president at that time. And everyone was going to go to war, to fight. Yeah. And I ended up in a dorm.
The war of terror.
Yeah, I ended up in a dorm with a bunch of redneck Americans, to some extent, and
at this point in time,
and you try to have some sort of a civilized conversation about the bigger things in life, like right or wrong, or peace, and religion, and all that kind of things.
Not there. No. Get the red cup out and play beer pong, and then you'll be okay.
Yeah, and I mean, so that was the experience, and because everyone's going to go to war, everyone's going to go to Iraq. One of my roommates came in and said, "You know what? I don't know what. I've been enlisted now, so they're going to send me." And I was like, okay, congrats. You know, do you know where Iraq is? No.
It's France, somewhere there.
Do you know where Europe is? No. Do you know? I mean, it was like, yeah. So I understand that the whole thing, but that is also an experience that kind of enriches your life.
So were you? How long were you in Texas?
I think it was less than a year. So it was
like one semester or 2 semesters.
Yeah, I think it was more about 1.5. Or 2. It was supposed to be 2, but I was more scuba diving the latter part of the second semester because that was apparently a course you could take at the University of
Marine biology.
Yeah, something like that. But it was fun, and then got back and then actually started working as a management consultant, which was supposed to be a really cool thing, and that brought me to a long life in a suitcase and and traveling across. Yeah, I mean basically that's my wife jokes about that. You know, in the first couple of 5 years we did stambit in my apartment, and I was always in Norway in Stavanger. It was a consultancy, and so going to stambit, someone would ask you, where do you want the pipes, and how do you want, what kind of colors do you want? So
you weren't there.
I wasn't there, so it was like, and FaceTime and things wasn't working that fine, so it was like, okay, go with something that goes very fine, and everyone turned out green. So anyway, and then consultancy, got that, but then when kids' life comes into your life and you start thinking other priorities.
That was in Accenture? Or
yeah, it was in Accenture. Yeah, true. I was in Accenture. It was a really cool experience because it's like a cult. The first weeks they sent you to St. Charles. It's I don't know if you know St. Charles. It's another redneck outside of Chicago area, and then you're actually really brainwashed. So it's like you come in and there's a room of 10,000 people, but literally, I mean, a lot of people because they put together all the new joiners and send them.
And you get the Accenture indoctrination.
You know what you got?
Experience.
You know what you get?
No.
You get Bill. That was the CEO of Accenture. You get Bill. So doom, and what happens? And Bill enters the stage, and he welcomes you, and then he talks about this is the beginning of the rest of your life or something like that. And this goes on, but I think it's a fantastic network. You get to be structured. That's what you learn.
Yeah. So whatever you like it or not, you learned a lot and you grow. And there's a lot of methodology and a lot of things that you have with you in your suitcase for the rest of your life.
True. So that was what I usually joke about. That I mean, that's how you kind of when you approach a challenge or a problem, whether that is an AI or something else, it's a matter of how you structure it. How you chop up the elephant. So that was the school that formed in that direction. And then consultancy was working fine, but you can't put 80 hours a week.
I mean, like you have other priorities, or you have there could be a good thing, but it could also be something where you in the end you've done it and you want to do something.
Yeah, and so 2 beautiful kids, and then you end up and thinking, I can't do this. So took a detour via. What was it? It was a venture cap focusing on oil in China.
Really? Oil in China?
Yeah. I mean, with the promise of private jets, and it was a whole lot of things. So that was like, interesting. I should try this on. The first week we ended up in Zermatt.
And starts good.
Yeah, it starts good. Like helicopter drops. I barely skied. So you end up there, helicopter drops, and it's like super fancy, and everyone was like top geared, and I come here with stadium bought something like that, and try to barely make it down the hill before killing myself. But that works, but that is a very tough year for us in that company because the business model wasn't really sustainable. In that sense, in my opinion. But then actually that's how I got in contact with where I'm here right now, with the bank, Swedbank.
Right. And when was the year you joined Swedbank?
2013.
13.
Yeah. So that's it. That's how it all starts.
Perhaps before we move into the Swedbank story, we also have a special guest here today, Anders Lindén. You may not see him on the camera, but he's running around here.
You can see him.
Oh, you can. Awesome.
You can wave on the camera now.
But we're honored, and it's a bit of a special occasion tonight because it's the 30th episode of the AIAW Podcast.
It's a big commitment.
And we also got listed in the top 100 AI podcasts in the world, which is kind of a big thing as well.
Yeah, right? we were. Yeah, that was.
Awesome thing.
Faster than we thought.
Yeah. But Anders will be here today and also take a lot of pictures and perhaps also bring in some comments and questions if we may.
Yeah, if you can hear me. I don't know if you can.
We can hear you in the background. Yes.
Yeah, and we joked and said like after the corona, this is the way it should be. There's an AI afterwork of the industry going on upstairs, and it's like, Nima, we have a question for you. Could you come down? And then so Anders is bringing a little bit about this flavor today. That's cool.
Like you hire a photographer to shoot the party, but
the party
ends up in the basement where the podcast is going because
that's
so much more interesting. Than
so much more fun. That's it. You know, as you said it before, the party is always in the kitchen. This is the new kitchen.
Yeah.
The data kitchen.
The data kitchen. But that's the brand, by the way.
Yeah.
So if you have a question, just come around here and
kitchen.
speak in my mic later if you have some questions. So you can just jump in at any time. You know, that's how we roll a bit. You know, improvising a lot. So.
Yeah.
But I guess that's I'm trying to read that. I said, like, who is Nima Ghorbani? I guess that is a little bit fast forwarding. But I mean, in everything aside, it's been a long journey, and who's kind of where I'm ended up right here and sitting with you guys. I like to have fun in life. I don't like to look very seriously at things, which is an interesting in the position I have right now.
In a bank.
Fighting in a bank. But I think life deserves to be taken with a smile.
Yes. Good philosophy.
I really am excited about all the things that's happening right now. I think we are living in an extremely excited time, and how we can go about to leverage that into actually make something good out of it. So I think that's awesome.
But speak a bit about how did you get in contact with Swedbank, and how did that story happen?
That was actually, I think that was me applying for a job, something like that. Yeah. And then I got to meet I got in contact with the Mickey Björkner, who is currently the head of the largest business area in Swedbank, which is the Swedish banking, the Swedish part of the operations, and a super inspiring leader, a guy who I can resonate with, and a progressive thinker. So at that point in time, when he shared his vision and what he wants to do, and the kind of support he needed, I thought that was, wow, this sounds like something I can help with. And bank sounded really, really boring. And I was like, can it be fun? So I thought, let's give it a try. And working with him and then his team later on, and then I was very much involved in. Actually, it's interesting. At that point in time, spent like 6 months or so in a basement lock or in a lock in a war room, like designing the future digital organization. And then one of the components or boxes where I put on the board was actually something around analytics or intelligence, or actually making use of data.
Business intelligence.
Actually, it was more smart. We still had a lot of business intelligence, but it was more about we should be able to do something a little bit more smarter with our data than just create a bunch of reports.
Yeah.
And before that, I had been involved in a lot of different projects where it was about how we can monetize data and how we can actually understand disruptive new technologies and in the context, for example, of telecoms. I was in Italy working with the operator Wind, and they were making 3-digit million investments together with the European Union into expanding broadband. And the question, okay, if you want to do a 3-digit million investment, what kind of services you want to run on that? What kind of things you can actually do to leverage the massive amount of capacity and data you can utilize? So at that point, we were talking about, okay, maybe you can actually have intelligent, robotic surgeries being done using, high-speed internet. Or you can actually have things like Doctor.se, which we have right now, or Kry or something like that. And at that point, it was like, no, that's not going to happen, if you're sitting sipping your wine in a countryside in Italy. So that was the kind of things I was involved in. And that has always been sort of a bit of a passion to see how we can expand our mind.
Yeah. And what was the first roles when you? How was that the first years framed from it? Like, what role did you have in the bank then? And a little bit see how the progression in the bank.
Yeah, I think it's. I think first title was something like a management advisor, something like that. which basically means you can do anything or someone tells you what to do.
Good title.
Yeah, but then quickly moved on to actually then being in responsible for putting together this, the box I actually draw on a whiteboard. And then Mickey was like, okay, now you actually need to go build it then if it's not there. But I mean, we had we had a bunch of probably very classical setup, like a bunch of fragmented functions. People sitting here, people even calling themselves data scientist or analyst or analytics or whatever, but very fragmented working with this. And then what we tried to do over the coming 5, 6, 7 years was to try to actually consolidate that. And then as part of that journey, trying to outline what are the capabilities we need to have, not now, but in the 3 months or 6 months or a year or 2 years, to be able to cater for these long-term objectives we have. If you want to have superior user experience, or if you want to fight financial crime or whatever that might be, seems like reasonable to rely on data.
So you said fragmented. Do you mean that at that time they had like analysts or data scientists spread out throughout the organization, and you tried to consolidate them and organize them in a...
Exactly. That was so we had one guy, and it was quite isolated in the sense that, there was one guy sitting, and maybe he had access to some old data warehouse where he could pull out some BI reports. Maybe he could run a linear regression on it. He was using, someone could use SPSS, drag and drop kind of stuff. And it was all really because, people were really making impact, but it couldn't really scale.
No, and I think we have had a lot of conversations on this, and this is almost that we should park it. But it's the interesting part is that it seems like a trend that a lot of people have had fragmented approaches to and having a spread out analytical environment in silo, very limited, not scalable. And then it seems there is a trend that you need to consolidate, not only on organization point of view, but also technology and how you work, until then ultimately spread out again in order to have domain knowledge close to, like AI and domain knowledge close to each other. So it's a little bit like in order to harmonize a modularized approach, you kind of need to take steps first to consolidate, and then when we have it.
Let's go a bit, I think. With
okay,
it. What do you think the pros and cons? You came in, it was a bit fragmented. And what's the cons? What's the drawbacks of having a fragmented organization like that? And what is the added value of having a more centralized or different organization?
The issues we could see at that point in time was, and honestly we still see that, because it's the lifelong journey. I'm not really sure we will ever get there, but that's
in an enterprise it's a life.
It was a fact that you don't utilize assets, you don't have a common base. You can talk about things like CI/CD or DevOps, or actually industrializing, putting things in production to make things really integrate part of key business processes. It was more at best it was a piece of report with some sort of an standard deviation metrics to it, or the R2 numbers to it, and then like, hey, here you go, here is your your linear regression.
But is it fair to say that when you start fragmented like that, none has really an industrialized approach? It's very and it's very personal based how far they have gone and all that. So it's not really enterprise value. It's not really enterprise and culture. It's down to human capital or one individual who is sort of passionate to take a silo somewhere, right?
True.
And in order to get this to scale and to become an enterprise muscle, that's when you start thinking about, okay, how do we consolidate first?
Yeah.
Is that fair?
That's exactly how we thought. Actually, at that point in time, but I think at many times we underestimated, and to some extent still underestimate the things, basic things, which I've talked about before. Is that it's you invest in a lot of cool tech, bring in your GPUs and your deep learnings, but you don't, your data is not right.
Your data is not right, and your processes or organization to work.
Yeah. So that's sort of a challenge, and I think we were, we were really proud that we could attract a lot of good people. We were always like, it's a bunch of PhDs coming in, and when people come in, they have ambitions, they want to evolve, so they want to give them the cool tools so they can continue building and innovating. But then actually when trying to put this in production in a massive, large scale, especially in very critical processes, what happens is that you look at, you don't have your data lineage, or there's challenges on the data side, or, you can't even dream about having real-time scoring or interference and stuff like that. So
what is your optimal solution to this? Because, you can list pros and cons of having people embedded closely to the business that you have. And you can have pros and cons with having also, centralized people, and potentially they're a bit disconnected from the business then. But what would you say if you were to re-architect, so to speak, the organization of data scientists in Swedbank? What do you think that the best design of that would be?
The things we actually did now since January in my new role, but that would be kind of like a semi-federated model. We talked about it.
Yes.
That you still have your core. You have a core center of excellence kind of set up where you.
So more long-term thinking kind of group.
I mean, you have that in place. Actually, we actually have that in place right now. We try to foster the thinking or alignment of standardization processes, and then you have your satellites. Right. Embedded into closer to the business lines.
So it's a hybrid organization, right? So
you could describe it as a hybrid. There's probably different names to it.
Have you used the terminology hub and spoke, or what's this?
That was one of the consultant slides someone has showed on one of the conferences in the hub and spoke.
So hub and spoke is one concept that's been floating around, and that's one way of explaining that. How far have you talked about? I think the next way of explaining distributed in different ways. We have talked about data mesh. It's been sort of hijacked by the architects and the data engineers, but it's actually an organizational practice, to be honest. Because to me, this is hub and spoke to understand the core principles, what is happening within the domain and what is happening centrally. I mean, like if I make an analogy, we build a factory and we have people working on the overarching factory, and then we have people working in different assembly lines with different purposes. Yeah. So have you, is that resonating with how you're thinking right now, or how are you thinking hub and spoke? Because hub and spoke is easy to say, top level, but when you start digging into it, how to implement it,
it's going to be tough.
It's different, then you get really hardcore. I think we've used the analogy where I've been working: hotel lounge, hotel lobby, and hotel room, or factory and assembly line. Do you see what I mean, right?
Yeah.
What is common? What is we all should use? What's the standards in order to have autonomy, but at the same time not have fragmentation?
I think the biggest challenge for us has been that both of these organisms or parts might run in different pace.
Yes,
and they should ideally be aligned. Because I mean, yes, you could set up you can go out and recruit your 3 people, data scientists or analysts or whatever you call it, in some corner.
Yeah.
And now I have my satellite, so I can start working.
Yeah.
But you still have the challenge which you had actually 7 years ago, because you still don't have the central core capabilities, the standardization.
No.
And trying to align these time-wise, I think that's been the biggest challenge for us, because everyone is driven. Everyone wants to leverage the value of data and foster the new oil and all of that.
But let's really stick here and let's peel the onion on this problem. Why is it so important that they are aligned? And why, so the satellite guys would argue something, you're holding us back. We can go faster. You're a bottleneck. We want to go in our satellite. But why won't that work? I have my very clear, it will not scale, in my opinion. You will not be able to share data if you haven't set standards around sharing data, as an example.
There you go. I mean, you can't compare things. There is no quality control. And there's also, which is important from a banking perspective, or actually in every industry, is efficiency.
Yes.
Because you
economies of scale even.
Yeah, I mean, you can utilize common assets.
Yes.
And that example we've seen, there is one guy making the same thing, right? And one of the guys doing it's kind of very similar thing, but not really that. Building a similar solution, but he's using entire other data tables, and then we duplicate everything, and there's point-to-point integrations, and here you go.
And isn't it somewhere now, when you get deeper and deeper into this, a lot of the stuff that we do actually can end up as infrastructure as code. So the scaffolding, the templates, the way you set things up can be reused, even if the fundamental content or the purpose of the whatever data management pipeline you have built is different. And I think this is where people have a hard time understanding the industrial factory approach versus custom shop approach. I mean, like I joke and say, you have monkey garage. You like cars. You've seen the show. Gas monkey garage. They build beautiful cars, but they don't really build it in the same way as BMW in Stuttgart.
No,
quite different. It's both beautiful, but one is quite proprietary, custom craftsmanship, and the other one is industrialized. So I think this is, if you want to get scale, if you want to get even the satellites to work more efficiently, you kind of need the central team here as well.
You do. At least that's our philosophy, and I also seen another issue is that when you try to actually compare business value, it's going to be very different because everyone does it a little bit differently. It's like, oh, okay, but what does that mean in terms of ROI on the development cycle? You know, how much time did you actually spend on doing this? And then it comes another unit which happens to sit on some sort of production system who actually data is very next corner. And that becomes challenge because if you can't actually show the business value or provide a comparable ROI, then really why are you doing it?
Yeah, tough questions here, but I think it's a very important one. You know, how you organize.
But more and more, I think the answer we get from very experienced guests is you need both. You need hybrid. You need factory people. You need assembly line people. And one driver is you need to have domain expertise and data science expertise close to really understand the content of your algorithm. But that's not the same to see that we need to have factory as well, right? So the industrialized. So it's very much separation of what we are working on in the factory or essentially versus this that I think now maybe in 2021 is starting to get more clear. I think this was not so clear 2-3 years ago. We understood hub and spoke in concept, but now I think we're starting to understand what's the difference in what we do. Do you think?
Absolutely, and I wouldn't really say that I think that a lot of other organizations actually understood it either 2021. I think it's still a journey.
It's still a journey.
It's still a very large journey. Yeah,
fair point.
And often again there are a lot of fundamental things like, okay, fine, you agree on the organizational setup or the processes, but what does it take to take you in that direction, or actually even could say when is it over or when is it done? Where is it in place? That definition of done is something also we always struggle with.
I'm not sure if I would call it assembly line or factory, because I think, you know, when we enable domain experts to do the real thing, they should be the stars. I mean, in some way, at least when I listen, it sounded like they're not. But I think the time when we can enable domain experts in whatever field of some product or part of the organization to really take charge and drive the development and innovation, that's truly when the scaling of innovation happens. Would you agree with that?
I would agree with that, but I think I see our jobs is to put the right tools in their hands.
Yes,
yeah,
that's true. And then becomes a service organization.
So the factory and assembly line, I mean, like Scania, that's where I'm spending a lot of time right now. And then you need to find analogies and storylines that work in the context you have.
But I think some people may take offense. You know,
but I think the whole idea that we are trying to understand and learn, and as you say, it's a journey, is that we have teams now that are starting to work in different business domains. So they are hardcore data engineers, even to the point where they are responsible for data products or data and algorithm products. But we want the central team to build the templates and scaffolding. So if I want an event stream type data pipeline to run something, we can build that as a template, put that in GitLab, have that as a scaffolding for when the next data domain team is kicked off. So basically the data domain team are the real heroes in terms of creating the business value. Because they then know exactly the problem they're trying to solve.
Should we park this a bit? I think it's such an important topic, and we keep, not being able to leave this topic. I'll add it to a list here. Perhaps you can phrase it. What should be a good topic, a title, so to speak? Should it be, what is the purpose of the centralized team versus the
domain team?
Domain team.
So basically, we are all working in one big happy family when I say industrialized, that's what I mean, like data factory style. And then basically we have different roles to play in here. And then what is the factory role and assembly line role would be one way of putting it, or central team versus business domain teams.
Nima, what happened after that? So you worked a lot with trying to, defragmentize, so to speak, a bit the analysts in Swedbank as well. What happened after that?
I think we managed to move into this centralized direction, established ourselves as a center of excellence or community of practice or whatever you want to put in that, and then we try to implement our solutions into different domains, and there was quite a lot of focus back in then. And that was probably 2014-15 on the retail business, trying to understand how we can leverage data to tackle one of the biggest challenges in banking as an industry is to improve customer experience and customer satisfaction. bank for some reason, are not really on the top list of customer satisfaction. So and that's still a journey we are on and working on it. So we spend quite a lot of time, all of these traditional models, which I'm sure, Anders, you're working on as well, but with recommendations and next best actions and, churn.
Can you give it a bit more concrete examples? So this is for the bank still. It's not really for helping customers of Swedbank. It's really for the bank itself, or what do you mean?
Yeah, so it's actually two sides. First, we started working within the bank to make sure that actually bank can sell more product.
Yeah.
So how do we make more money? Internally, yeah. So instead
you can
of
also phrase it like helping customers to find the right product.
Yeah, we can next best action with the customer, or actually the recommendation of what is best for you at that particular point in time. Yeah. I think I had the vision. I still kind of have that vision. Don't really know if that vision is doable given where we are, but I would like to say when it comes to that retail side, and for us it was quite a lot. Or I always wanted to say that. I want to be able, and I don't mean this in a scary way, so don't censor me, but I want to be able to know the customer intent before the customer does it know it itself. Do you know what I'm saying? So I want to be able to, based on the customer's behavior, on experiential data, on whatever available footprints we have, to say, okay, probably Anders is keen on getting this, or he's moving this into this stage of his life. So what can we do in a proactive way from a banking perspective to provide us services to serve him better? Yep. I honestly believe if you could do that, that would make him more happy, or that would make you more happy. Absolutely. So that was the kind of experience we were looking for, and then that required a massive lot of tech to make it happen. And ideally you want to have this seamless experience of data coming in real time. You pick up the signal, you have any sort of model that try to make some sort of intelligence of it, shoot some sort of recommendation, which is then packaged into some sort of a nice message wrapper, and then pang, it reaches you. And all of that in, less than 1.5 seconds.
Looks good on PowerPoint.
Yeah, it looks really good on PowerPoint, And I think I actually have presentations about this on conferences. But that was, we like everyone else, very immature.
Yeah. So to decompose that to the pipelines and algorithms and recommender systems.
So bring it down to more manageable. And then, of course, we then moved on from those kind of ambitions, and we actually tried to put that in production, but we put down our ambitions, maybe not do it in real time, but maybe do it in a batch and do it a week later or next day. Could still be quite good, yeah.
Discover Weekly does it weekly in Spotify, and it still works.
Weekly is not bad.
Yeah, and then actually we could see some significant uplift. We could actually see people like, wow, that product recommendation or that service recommendation really, converted in much higher rates than traditional.
How did you push it to the customers? Did you do it through the webpage or through email, or how did you
it was different type of, both traditional marketing or traditional sales channels, and of course it was more and more moving into...
So traditional sales channel would be that we have a recommendation and we put it into the retail rep's hand.
Yeah, it could be like that.
He calls the customer.
Yeah, it could be something like that.
It could be a hybrid.
Yeah, it could be that, and then so that was one model, and maybe that was a model that was more working for corporate business, because there you need to have the relationship, and you can't just push some message digitally.
And then consumer-wise, it's too expensive, so you need to figure it out.
Exactly. So you guys know what we're talking about. So that was the whole next best actions, and then putting banners into web pages and trying to do in some sort of a context, provide that recommendation so it feels relevant. And of course, then adding the personalized touch to it, and messaging and so on. So that we worked quite a lot on, and it showed good progress. We could see uplift in conversions and so on. And then we moved on to things like, can we? Let's take things like if you want to buy a. You all know that a lot of people now, particularly in the pandemic, buy a lot of expensive credits. Paying like 255% interest rate.
They don't understand what they're doing.
No,
they want to shop and they don't realize what.
Yeah, and what does it mean? This is like basic math that you should be able to do, and basic, sound financial economy. So people, so unfortunately they are being exploited, and of course you get this you buy your TV, and you get this 255 or 2,000% interest rate, and it's like, wow. That was an expensive TV. But what we want to do, we want to try to see if we can actually provide a service with a nice interface, actually towards the end customer directly, to say, okay, guys, here is and behind that, was quite a really cool, cash flow prediction model. It becomes really sophisticated, neural network architecture behind it, multi-layer. It was like 25 billion rows of code, and I don't know, it was massive. And it actually worked.
Quite techy cool stuff.
Yeah, it was quite technical stuff, but so we spent quite a lot on that part, but then we realized if we can't connect it to a proper user interface, no one's going to understand it. So we actually then we went to Micke Björknet again, to investment committee, and we said, guys, so and when we have this really great guy who actually has a background in communication, and he comes in like, no, you're not going to sell it like that. Go back, I will put every line of code somewhere down. No one's going to see it, but I will build some sort of, GUI with chatbot on it. And then that was like, wow. So you guys could go in and you can ask this question to this chatbot. Hey, can I afford a TV? Or I don't know, can I afford this car? And the chatbot will in the background do this, prediction of your cash flow based on your income and all of that services. And then tell you, you probably can't. But hey, here is a link to a affordable consumer loan credit, which with not 3,000% interest rate, exactly. It's actually 3.5% or something like that. Or it could actually say that depending on your behavioral and your purchasing behavior and your other data, we could say that you can afford this. But have you considered to actually, instead of a new TV, put that into savings? Yeah, because with the savings you could actually get growing your money.
Yeah, if you do it like this instead, you can buy your TV outright in 2 years.
Yeah. So that was what when we evolved into that direction of retail and trying to put that.
And how far have you? Let's take a couple of examples that is now in production. So these, how many things of these is from idea stage to POC stage to sort of production stage?
I would honestly, unfortunately, say that there is a lot of great ideas, a lot of POCs, MVP 1, 2, and 3, and 4, and 5s. But we have struggled quite a lot with productionizing it.
And when we say production in the bank, what does production mean for you in Swedbank?
For us, it means the end-to-end integration into a business process.
So it's back into the core P&L and the normal way of selling.
Yeah. When it comes to just this NESPEX actions recommendations, that those were implemented because there you did not have full end-to-end integration to all the processes, because you could still theoretically output a list and then tell the rep to call that list, right? You need to bid all the business processes.
And this is why, this whole augmented intelligence we think is maybe the future, not only because it's how we work as human, but because it's a hell of a lot easier to put things in production when you basically slip into the old process somewhere rather than completely reinventing the process. Maybe that's your end game, what you want to do, but you can get production value faster if you're a little bit smart here. Like, for instance, you would do a recommendation, but you put it back into the core process even before it's completely changed.
Yeah, or in our case, much simpler. I get actually tired of all this production challenge. I was like, can we output an Excel list with the customer's name and a yes or no flag to it? Yes, we can. Okay, let's do that and then send it.
So and I think this is a brilliant, this is quite profound, Nima, because we do beautiful recommender engines. It's very, very advanced. But in the end, it needs to go somewhere to the action. Yeah. And then at some point, actually, the sales guy liked their Excel lists. Why don't we give them Excel lists?
Yeah, so that
and this is step on the road.
So because you need to, dig smaller holes and then you can expand the holes and you can show the value. So that was the retail journey, and I don't know if we should get into the new position of what we do now. So I think what like you all have seen and heard in media and the news, of course, the banking industry and financial institutions are undergoing, are unfortunately being used as a way to launder money in criminal activities. And that has been an issue in the past quite extensively, which has impacted banks in lots of places around the world. And I don't know, the numbers are astonishing when you look at the amount of money that is being laundered in banking as such. But, and of course, Swedbank wasn't isolated from that. We were of course subjected because of the vast network we have, because of our footprint in the Baltics and other countries. And of course also because we are a very much retail-oriented bank with a lot of private customers. Bad guys utilize our systems and laundered money and they're doing bad things, literally. And of course you can put the nice words on all of these bad things they do, but essentially they use our network systems to in not very positive ways. What then happened was that was it 2.5, 3 years ago when all of this kind of accumulated with this Svete granskning and all of that. and other banks, but also part of that sort of chain of events. We of course needed to kind of take in your holistic view on the whole topic and kind of recognize that we were of course working with fighting financial crime before that as well, but I think we kind of need to again consolidate our effort and also really making an intelligent bet into the area. So I mean, I've seen when people used to do these investigations of fighting financial, your classical network analysis and all of that. But you had to imagine yourself like 25 different windows opening yourself, and you had like 35 different Excel sheets, and you're trying to like row 28, row 85, row 2065.
This is actually a very good AI problem to solve.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like it classifies this as good or bad. So mathematically, you're trying to think that this is what the kind of service we were providing to actually classifying customers who will buy something or not could be very easily transferred into, is this a good transaction or bad transaction? Yeah. There's a classification exercise. So that's how I kind of entered or we were entered into this domain, that actually the bank prioritized that, guys, you guys are doing some really good stuff. But
so someone came and knocked on the door and said, look, we need to look, can you classify and look into AML stuff?
Exactly. That was this, and
money laundering.
Yeah, and it started by someone was actually was going to buy a very expensive consultancy service for doing that same things, and I was like, shouldn't we be able to do that? Because that's we know the data, we have working with you guys who are domain expert. We can build this. It doesn't have to be any deep learning stuff. It can actually turn out to be a logistic regression model. Yeah. Which is now, helping X numbers of millions of customers being scored in real time, and getting all of that, predictability into that.
So did your title change with this? Because I think you're
my title changed with this. Yeah, that's a funny part. And so we were working like a guerrilla before this. So we were like, head of data analytics or AI or something like that. And we were a much smaller group. We were some sort of a both business and IT or tech. Actually, we talk about tech now.
You organize under IT ultimately or under business?
That's the thing. We don't really have IT anymore. So IT is embedded into business.
When did that change happen?
Well, that happened 3 to 4 years ago, I think. Yeah. Okay. So that's actually a really nice move we've done. So every then business area group function then could have its development capacity, and then based for that particular domain. So there was then. So basically, I was then in the.
Wait. Unpack on that. So isn't that like the trap? So you actually create like a silos, or because if every domain expert has their own capabilities, then how the data communicates?
Yeah, no, but that's the thing. We have our group layer of data, which is common. Mm-hmm. But then you build your services on top of it. So that's how you do it. So the service development for that particular domain
is in one domain.
In one domain. But there's common data and then common underlying infrastructure.
There's a common infra team.
Yeah. There's a common infra stream. They are actually then called, I think they are the only ones guys still EIT.
Yeah. So the IT, what you define as IT outwards is hardcore.
How hardcore infra, basically the server guys.
Yeah,
we joke about that. So who's doing a fantastic job, by the way, I should say that. So they were there and providing that that underlying platforms, and then we were building we are now building our stuff on top of it. So that's how it started. And my unit were part of this no man land, because we were purely business. It was a developing unit in the business capability, which created a lot of friction in a regulated world. So as of 1st January, then I got an opportunity to actually then come over to one of these, to the anti-financial crime unit. Sounds actually really cool, almost like CIA, something like that.
AML with yellow on black.
Yeah, AFC. Yeah. And then as part of that journey, then of course, then actually being involved in not only the AI part, but also actually the entire stack of development, which is now including also cyber area, your customers' KYCs, and then the anti-money laundering. But what we said, that the whole reason of this new position or this logic, because we also bring together a lot of new capabilities, was that now we're going to we do see there is an end-to-end reasoning or process thinking, holistic view, that all of these different components domain are actually connected to each other, if you think about from a crime perspective.
Yep, I get it.
And each of these domains create a significant numbers of data points. So what if you actually utilize a layer of analytics on top of this to extract intelligence that can serve in these domains?
So what you're saying then, that you're sitting within one domain, but your domain has a kind of different flavor because many parts of the bank need your service.
Yes.
On the one hand. On the other hand, for you to do a really good job, you need data from all the different domains.
Yeah, exactly. The data part needs to come from production systems that could be
So
everywhere.
even if you're putting yourself in one domain, AFC, the way you work is not so much. It's different flavor. You need to go out and serve others, and you need to get data from others.
Yeah, exactly. So that's my everyday life.
But that is interesting because of course then this becomes your tech stack or how you need to work with data and what you are expected to do and serve and data you want from everybody. You always want to find data and be allowed to use other people's data, and you always need to convince other people to use your service rather than build their own.
Yeah.
Is that fair?
When it comes to building other services, that actually everyone comes to us to build because we have kind of got the group mandate to build those services.
Yeah, and you got the brand, so people are starting. You get the pull.
Yeah, we get the pull, so that's not
nice.
an issue.
That's
But
nice.
but I think that and I think we talk about it's the bank's data. It's not no one's data in that sense. So, but still, we need to make sure that to bring together and still try to consolidate even further all of these fragmented data islands.
Yeah. And is the culture there? Sharing is the new black. We use that terminology.
Yeah, that's the first one I heard. It's getting there. Yeah, it's getting there. I think particularly when it comes to fighting financial crime, you really need to have the 365 view.
So you have a very good case.
We have a very good case.
And compliance pushes. We need to share data for compliance reasons.
Yeah.
It's usually a good one.
Yeah, regulatory bodies demanding it. So that actually, and I mean, it makes sense if you think about it. You can't fight crime with half your eyes blinded, right?
That's a good one.
But speaking about the banking industry, and it's probably one of the industries that had the strictest regulation in place to also make use of the data. And I have some friends working in banking industry, and for them it's a really tough challenge.
Yeah.
How can you actually make that happen? How can you actually extract data and work that in perhaps a centralized way and still comply with all the regulation that you have to comply with?
Honest answer, I don't know. Every day is a new day.
It is hard, right?
It's really hard.
But how do you see?
Perhaps we can just follow up, a bit on that and say, okay, so how big is the problem? Is it really the case that you are not able to use data and AI to the extent you would like to because of regulation today? Or do you think you can find ways around it? Or is it really limiting your ability to make use of data?
I think it's about translation and knowledge. So let me explain that. I mean, no one tells us you can't use the data. I actually think that our Swedish and Nordic level, the regulatory bodies' knowledge in this area is increasing. I mean, I actually was surprised when I read in one of these, directives that came on the banking that, hey, we want you to use machine learning. I was like, what? Okay, we want you to use real-time data. I was like, what? Okay. So that knowledge is increasing from a regulatory body. So that's good. I think what is matter is that when you develop these services, because no one prevents you from developing these smarter, intelligent services, is the being able to explain it. Because the control bodies who are actually going to make sure that you actually catch a batch of bad guys.
Compliance-wise, you are supposed to regulate. From a regulator point of view, you have to do anti-money laundering. From another regulatory point of view, you have to comply with data rules. And those two is sometimes hard. This is where you need to explain why we're doing it so everybody's happy.
Yeah, but I think that particularly, if you are referring to, for example, data privacy, that particular challenge is I think we've been able to manage that and doing that fairly good. So we don't have that particular issue. So it's like, because I think...
So GDPR, for example, is not a major issue for
GDPR is depending on, because if you are entitled to use data, even private data to some extent for fighting for legislative purposes
and legitimate interest. I think this is really to understand GDPR how it's written.
The purpose, what is the purpose? So I mean, you can't use that. If you have a name or an address, what is the purpose of using that data? If the purpose is to actually fight financial crime, fine, because that. But if the purpose is to sell you, I don't know, a car or a diapers in an intrusive way, then no. So, and I don't find that to be an issue, honestly. I think it's more about that when you build these black box things, which we love to do, because how do you explain that?
And what would you say? I mean, is it that a regulatory body comes and say, you need to be able to explain each prediction, otherwise we can't use it, or how strict is the regulation right now?
It depends on what. I mean, if you want to use for classifying risks, or if you want to do to prevent or block something. It depends on the severity of your actions. I mean, you can take it all the way. If you want to classify if someone can get a credit or not, of course it would not be very good if you have bias in your data and your model can't explain why a white guy gets it but not the other guy.
I'm actually surprised to hear this, and it's positively surprised that it actually does work to use data even within the banking industry to a large extent, right?
Yeah, no, I mean, yeah, it is. I mean, I think our biggest challenge again is not the usage of data. It is a matter of again being able to explain in an understandable way, not showing this is the line of code. Please compliance, please read it. Here you go.
But we need to unpack this, because between the lines here, why do you think it's? Because when we talk to different people, we get different views on how difficult it is. And my hypothesis is that in between the lines here, I read some people have basically come further in how deep they have gone in trying to understand the law, and then interpreted the law, and then made a framework within the bank of how to work, and then all of a sudden the whole anxiety goes down again. I mean, I think a lot of anxiety that I see is that I meet people and we discuss this, and we are all very uncertain what it means, and we had no one with the authority to sort of, this is how we interpret it in our company. So have you done a big piece of work here in Swedbank to sort of get your point of view how you want to treat it, and then basically that's why your anxiety level of this is way less than someone else?
I would say there is perhaps not yet a group common framework or a piece of document that describes and that would be applicable to everything.
Because it's different use cases.
Yeah, because different use cases. But rather, I think we try to chop off the elephant into categories and say for this type of categories of usage, this is our our risk appetite, and this is what the things we can do, and this is the no-go zones.
But this is very good, by the way, that you have scaled the onion on this and basically found a way to tackle it.
I think there we have a really good cooperations actually with all the regulatory bodies within the bank of second line and third line, and I think people understand, because at the end of the day, you can prevent financial crime by recruiting an additional 3,000 people. But that's not sustainable.
Financial crime is, very understandable and morally, acceptable thing to do, and I think that's easy to motivate that this is something we really should do what we can in terms of data and AI to prevent.
Yeah.
But I think one of the most classical examples otherwise is, should you get a bank loan or not? And using machine learning for that. Yeah. And I have myself used it a number of, talks you've given, Is it okay to use machine learning that potentially is not explainable, that is making the decision if a certain person should get a loan for an apartment or a car or whatever? What is your thoughts about that? And you can speak like hypothetically. I mean, it doesn't have to be about Swedbank in general, but what is your thought about the ethics around, making use of machine learning for decisions like this?
I think I would like to go back to the original, to the value we would create for our customers, right? Because at the end of the day, there's a lot of people's families, young people who are about to get their first mortgage, for example, or getting that consumer loan to buy that TV or whatever that might be. I mean, there is some sort of usage behind this and a value that particular product or service adds to the client. So, and if you still somewhere like me believe in the good of man, I like to think that people are generally good. And then you try to kind of infer that into your models. What I would like to say that, you don't want to, because I think there's a couple of challenges here. You can build we can build your machine learning models complex, black box, or, more explainable. You can use your data unbiased or biased. I would always like to put the line on the sort of say the side that's my personal view, so not the bank's probably, but I would always like to put the bar on where I friar hellre än fäller. So that's why when we have been encountered situations where we are, opting for, should we make this very complex and unexplainable, or should we utilize that data which is really good and accurate and real time and all of that, versus that data which is, very broad, but captures all, social aspects and demographics and all that, but we always go up for that part. And that sounds like a very safe answer, but honestly, because I don't want any position where someone comes in and want to get a bank loan and, I built the model or someone built the model which, disqualifies you and you can get that house, you can get that, boat or whatever you want to get. So if that means that the efficiency, because at the end of the day it's an efficiency and a cost related to it, super accurate model, 99% times is right, and versus the actually
pragmatic working,
meaning explainable
and friar hellre än fäller.
Yeah,
is what you're saying? It's a balance between being able to have a understandable or interpretable way of making a decision versus being too extremely data driven, which probably is good from the bank point of view to simply do, but it's not potentially morally or ethically potentially always viable to do that. Is that what you're saying? That this is the balance you're trying to find? Or?
Well, actually, I don't think it's so much of a balance, because I think we as a bank has taken that stand that we are always going for the moral.
The moral becomes the explainable one.
Because that's still this becomes like philosophical. That is sort of say the fundament of humans.
Yeah, so the point of view is like, yes, we want to use AI and machine learning, but we need to balance what we potentially could do with what is sort of morally or explainably the right choice. Which is a little bit on the pragmatic side, I would say. But I like that thinking.
But I think we become very much more mature in our thinking. Myself, I've loved, when I first got my first hands on in one of these, it was in KTH, one of these deep learning books or whatever. I was like, wow, this is something I really need to build. And in my new positions, like, we need to hire these super duper PhD, super data scientists who can build this on a multi-layer neural network, whatever. So that was I can raise my hand and say, honestly, confess that was me. So I've done that. So,
but you have taken one more loop around this now. Is that what we're saying?
Yeah, actually coming back to very much down to earth. If you can do it.
Let me challenge that then, and take the nerdy kind of data scientist that you spoke about, and take that side and say that imagine that it was possible to use a super deep neural network model, but actually it could explain itself, and it could perfectly explain, perhaps even in natural language, why it made a decision of why you should get a loan or not. Would that make it okay to use the deep learning model, you think?
It can be explained and it can be validated, why not? It's not the model construction itself. I think this is the validity of the explanation that is important here.
Yeah. Because I usually try to, for one, contrast a bit the deep learning models versus, for example, the logistic regression. And people say, we can so easily understand it. Just look at the coefficients. But I think that's so wrong, because they have so many issues with what these coefficients really mean, and it's really dangerous to trust them. And you can also contrast it in another way, saying, if I instead ask Henrik, and Henrik is going to make a decision if I get the loan or not, and he says, no, Anders, you're not getting the loan. And then I said, why? And Henrik says, well, because I think
I had a bad day. But that's human, so that's okay then.
So, the level of demand on explainability from humans is surprisingly low, I would say. And I think actually that's correct in some sense compared to AI. But still, if we can have AI that starts to move in that direction, where you can have explainable deep learning models, for example, do you think there will be a future for that, even for the banking industry, assuming it can be validated?
I think it's an inevitable road to go in this world where we are driven by cost efficiencies and operational efficiencies.
But let me try my theory on this, because my hypothesis here is that we have some sort of comfort zone, or what we are used to, or practices by legacy, or this is dogma, how we have done things, call it whatever you want. and we are sort of consistently pushing the boundaries, and this is an evolution. Mm-hmm. So if we ask the same question, we will sit here 10 years from now, and we will talk about deep learning is like linear regression. Should we really do quantum computing on the loan? And we're going to have exactly the same question.
You know how to touch my nerve, right?
Yeah, I know. I know how to. You can never do that with quantum computing. No, but you see what I mean, right? So I think it's a little bit like when we work on this, we get excited by the new tech. Mm. And then it's this sort of classic market window. What's the window of society to use this tech? I mean, it's like me and Goran, we want to sell deep learning training. We tried to sell deep learning training to the open market
it failed big time.
2 years ago. And you know what? The market wants to buy Power BI training. Okay, so the market window, we were too early, but then this window moves, right? So isn't it the same here, that what is not possible right now has nothing to do with tech right now, but it has to do with the societal ethic and moral and culture and
it's our maturity.
Maturity, I guess that's the right
No, but
word.
I mean, exactly. I mean, you said it really well. We need to step back. It's kind of hard to sit from Anders saying that. But but I think we need to step back. It's a big too much hype around this. I mean, there is this AGI or this general part and this
too many people doesn't even know what it is. When they don't even know what it is.
I think it's really exciting what's happening with all of these pre-trained language models and the amount of data that goes into that. But it also means that you need to probably put down half of a rainforest to power those.
We actually don't, but okay.
Yeah, but you do quite a lot. I mean, some of them are not. But I mean, I think that aspect of some of them, that's one of the aspects we're looking at right now. That can be built in. Sustainability, because I mean, we actually have within Swedbank, we're looking quite a lot and going into the sustainable direction. And we're talking about. And I understand there are like libraries in Python you can use to understand the sustainable, the carbon footprint assessment or whatever that might be. Right or wrong, I think the evolution needs to happen. The technological development is part of human being, and that needs to be continued.
Yeah,
I just need to put down some kind of footmark here from a technical point of view, and there certainly are so many.
Go for it, Anders.
I mean, there certainly are so many bad ways to do it, and one of the worst ways we've seen, especially in NLP, as you say, is that every language, for example, should have their own model trained from scratch, which basically take like a half of a rainforest to train, which is horribly bad. But there is so much more advances that happen in recent years that doesn't make that necessary. Yeah. And you can do easily with even like a few points, like a few hundred points of annotation, you can train and fine-tune models that actually work for your use case, and it's super cheap. So the whole pre-training versus fine-tuning kind of process that you have today is very efficient.
Yeah, but I remember when we had the year closing, and Anders, we were doing our top 10 list of our trends, and Anders was like, more or less like a kid in his 12-year-old kid, super excited, like, you need to understand that we have gone past, cutting down rainforest. You can do active learning, you can do this and this and this and this. So the evolution is going on right now. So we have had this topic. It hasn't really been so big, but the whole sustainability footprint is a huge topic. And the first model, like if we say GPT-3, yes, then you're cutting down.
There is even thinking about doing a Swedish GPT-3, which I.
Let's talk about cutting down rainforests. But then we move to MT5
or whatever.
So simply by going from GPT-3 to MT5. The footprint has drastically reduced.
I mean, isn't that great? I mean, we need to have. I think
so. We know this is happening, but this means you really need to stay on the ball game the whole time. And then we have this. That's why we talk a lot about innovation too. Like, do we want to do completely disruptive innovation and all that? And what I also have understood is, in one way, we want to do that, to do first principles and reinvent. On a macro life cycle scale, everything we do will be incremental. Even the big shifts will be incremental. Why? Because every year there are innovations done. So to do a leapfrog it doesn't really, well, you're going to do another leapfrog in 1 more year. So you need to you can't say, we're going to have a GPT-3 strategy for the next 5 years. It's already old. It's MT5 now. So it's like, do you see what I mean? Like, so this progression, what is, we always need to test the boundaries. But then what I like with your philosophy, Nima, is that you need to test it, but then you need to sense where is the market window, where is the cultural window right now. And then basically, you know what, I can do that, but I should do this.
And I think also, connected to what happened yesterday, we had this big proposal from the EU about regulation.
Okay,
for AI.
are we changing topic now? Is this?
Yeah, I'm not sure we should go
let's
there,
help the producer. Let's help the producer. Are we?
But let me just finish the discussion about the technical advances that's been doing. So for one, we can train and fine-tune models in a very, very much more efficient way these days. We can also do explainable predictions in a surprisingly efficient way. But there is a big disconnect between research advances versus what you can use in industry. So it takes a lot of time, but there is surprising advances happening. And it's actually one of the specialities that we do in Peltarion, which is explainable predictions. And we have a person that can actually generate, he's doing his PhD on this, and generate like natural language explanation saying, this is the reason why you should get a loan or not. And it explains it in like a sentence saying, you should get a loan because blah, blah, blah. And it's kind of amazing. So lots of stuff is happening. It hasn't really reached the mainstream,
Then I think maybe could that be because of this, again, this topic of domain knowledge? Because when you put that, we've looked at a bunch of, when we used to do chatbots, a couple of years ago, quite a lot, because we still have a bunch of chatbots in-house. And then we try to, and we have, because of our footprint across many different markets, of course, there is like Estonian, Latvian, Lithuanian, Russian, and there's like very different variations of Russian, and there's like Swedish, and then you have, Swedish English, mixed. And you have all of these different variations. And then on top of that, you then add the financial lingo. And then you try and train a model. How good do you think that works? Not that really good, because then you talk about, hey, I want to have a 3 years hedged, blah, blah, blah product. Can you fix that? To the chatbot like, hedged. Hedge.
Yeah, I can cut the hedge.
Where is the hedge? I was like, so you find yourself in really peculiar situations, right? So I think then again, having the domain, then incorporate, I'm absolutely agree with you. we need to then bridge this academic research world to the actual applications world, and there is the domain knowledge necessary to bring those together. So that is also another thing. One things that quite a lot. We're not doing that much as we should. We kind of recognize the need of it, but then of course we need to working closely with research bodies and universities to be able to bring that together into one holistic view. Because again, it's like very different worlds, right? We do quite a lot of work with universities. We have PhDs, industrial PhDs, people coming in, and then really, really cool stuff. Then it's like, I can need to put this into this, real world.
And you gave the best example is even inside the bank right now, and we're talking about the challenge of sharing and using data. And if I go into an application of anti-money laundering, AFC, not really a problem. But then I go into the other topic of recommending a loan or even trying to sell something. So you get quite narrowed down in the different categories where you will then have, this is where you have the GDPR challenge, this is where you have the ethical biased, algorithm problem, and in anti-money laundering it's something else. So truly this domain specific, so take this ultimate research and then figuring out how it applies and how we can use it. It's quite. You need to be super advanced, both on the domain side, on a quite narrow domain, as the hardcore tech.
Yeah,
I guess that's what you're saying.
Yeah.
It's not enough to say financial domain knowledge.
You need to bring it down, of course, very much into the details. And one of the cool applications, one of the things I'm really proud of, I think I should say it because I will give any shout out to those guys who actually built this. It's when we actually brought together these domains of things like investment advice, which is very complex, super regulated, and then we put that in the context of this needs to be regulated, it needs to be controlled because it's important for the trust, and customers need to trust us because if you want to invest your money, you need to be able to tell things have been following the playbook. And how do you do that? How do you introduce AI into making that control of that investment advice or that review has been done properly? So I think there again, I think what we need to step into is the marriage of also different business technology domains that we doesn't utilize very much. Now we talk about AI, but what is really AI? And then now we took that AI part, which is some sort of character recognition in our case or language models, and then we put that together in an RPA solution, a robotic solution, and then we put it into the cloud. And that's where magic happens. I mean, literally, it gives me goosebumps. And these guys were able to some things overcome data challenges, privacy challenges, interpretation challenges, AI challenges, training.
Can you give some concrete examples? I think it's so interesting to hear about, especially the good examples of what that does work or not. So if you just unpack a bit more,
tell us the story in reality.
If you give some simple, I know you can't probably go into too extreme details, but just to make it a bit more concrete for the people listening in, and if they want to get inspired for what did actually work well, as you said it did.
Yeah, and I think we're going to go present this into with the CEO quite soon. So I think he's
yeah. So we have a scoop now. We get it before the CEO.
No. I mean, he always knows. I'm actually pretty good in sharing the news because I want the success stories to be as an inspiration across the back. Yeah. But essentially, what it is about is that when you do investment advice towards our customers, you need to be able to also provide sufficient controls of the advice.
Controls or motivations?
No, controls. Actually, regulatory audits and controls, and you need to be able to. I mean, there's regulated that you can't just say anything. Yeah. That would be unmoral, unjust, unethical, but also regulated the fact that you need to be able to traceability, audit trails, and all of that component. So all of that has been. It's something that the banks follows very, very thoroughly, and the process to do this previously has been that very manual. You might have, you have a bunch of documentation that pertains to that particular control, and then you want someone and you have someone who, need to read through all of this documentation. But what if you have actually an AI who does that control and tells you if it's okay or not?
So it's not about the actual advice itself, but it's about the control and
exactly.
the auditable automation of auditing.
Yeah,
or something.
Automation of the controls.
Yeah.
So can the controls be interpreted by AI machine that can interpret that is this actually a good, has this particular advice been fulfilling the control points properly or not? And there you have this AI solution. I mean, it's a combination of in this case.
If we start the unpacking it, what's the manual typical process, and what could you do instead?
The manual process, of course, you have people, looking through all of these documents.
What is that work all about? Looking through the documents and following a checklist and looking at things that have been done.
And they are doing a fantastic job because it's experience-based, they've learned it. So there comes also the complexity of a domain and bringing that domain knowledge into a machine who can do that certain interpretations.
So there is a rule book, so to speak. There's business rules. What is good? What control should? What a good recommendation? How should it be done? Yeah. Experience and even
I mean there is this is the 25 checkpoints and this is how it should be filled, and if it's done and it's 100 points, great. If it's not, then
So that core process, which is quite an experience and knowledge-intensive process, you need to have the checklist, you need to know the points, but you need to also have experience to read what has happened.
And the time and the effort.
And what concretely did you do? What's the solution?
So the solution is, without going too concrete, is that take that particular documents, which is the result of that control, and then train a model on it. And a combination of language model, character recognition, bit of the image recognition, because
so you should be able to read straight from the actual word.
Extract the interesting part of it, extract the non-part that it contains PII. So we don't want to look at PIIs. So also being able to interpret
PII, personally identifiable information.
Yeah, exactly.
So the model needs to filter out part of the document.
Yeah, and that's focus. The far part. That part is actually not done by the model. It's a fantastic collaboration with the RPA. So the RPA, robotics part, picks that out.
Filter out first or after?
Filter out first and then sends it out to the cloud, because there can also
it saves this in a machine-readable format that can later be used by some other automated control system?
Yeah, it can be. And then the AI machine looks through this, gives the control control, yes or no. Basically, the thumbs up. Yeah, thumbs up or thumbs down.
Classification, positive or negative.
Yeah, for each of these control points, and then that's then inserted back to right now it's. I think it's a repository, and that insight is then feeded back into the advisors, essentially.
The advisor's normal workflow.
Yeah, the normal. Yeah, exactly. So they can understand. So we can understand that, because at the end of the day, we want to also. There is different steps into the evolution of the solutions. Right now, we are making sure that we're doing a lot of validations. That does the AI actually classifies this properly? If you compare with this guy who has 30 years of experience. So we're doing that, and it shows really astonishing achievements, so that's good. The next step is also making these integrations, because again, you want to do this in real time. And what Micke is asking me is that, guys, can we then provide not only the checkpoints, yes or no, but also the feedback was not right? Because then you actually then help people evolve. Here comes the augmentation. So you have the feedback loop, so you learn. And then, of course, technically, you need all the, you can't just drop files and there. You need to have API integrations, and API picks up, and you don't need to then, currently, it's not really fully real time. So it's like a batch, and then with some sort of sequence, frequency, it's pushed out, and then you pick it up. But now we want to do it, basically by a press a button when something is done, the AI kicks in the engine, gives the feedback.
Now I had a goosebump moment.
That's good.
I had a Nima game. I have them a lot, but
I'm doing right now t-shirts, and one of the t-shirts is Goosebumps.
So, because I had a bit of an aha moment rhetorically, because it's always struggling to explain. We need to go to production. We talk about going to production, and a lot of times we talk about the traditional. We need to have a model. That's not enough. You need to deploy the model. But here, Nima, what you did right now, you gave us the outlook. Well, if you look at going to production from a business perspective, 80% is about process, several different technologies working in orchestration in order to fundamentally change, first principles change to fundamentally reinvent how thing is done. And what you have explained now, if we decompose it, you have RPA to take away some data. Yeah. You need to you extract that, you interpret it with NLP, you send it to something else, and then you do the code, and you get the recommendation, and then you put that recommendation in front of the real people. And by the way, you give them feedback. And all of a sudden, that's why another thing, why don't fluff around on PowerPoint with big use cases. Do them very, very narrow. Yeah. Because if you want to put one use case in production like you did end to end, it's a shitload. You have several steps in different technologies.
Exactly.
And ultimately putting in production now, not only deploying a machine learning algorithm into the stack, but changing the core business process. I loved it. This is my goosebump moment to putting things in production.
And in our world, it happens in 3 months, which
that's really impressive.
So the team worked weekends and nights, because it was this marriage again, which I talk about, the integration and collaboration across domains, not only business domains, because you need to understand the investment advice, you need to understand the control, but then you need to understand how do you marry an RPA with the cloud, with an AI. And of course, do that. Try to make the lead times as short as possible.
But case studies or storytelling like this is excellent, because this also highlights why you need domain expertise. So it's not only domain expertise on the actual putting the box yes or no, but it's the domain expertise of how the process actually needs to work in order for this to be seamless in the bank.
Yeah,
hardcore domain. So it's domain expertise on the core topic. Then it's domain expertise on how the bank is doing it, how it will work in the bank.
I think it's we do see that to really extract value.
Yes,
you fundamentally need to kind of unleash yourself or unattach yourself of. It's funny because you actually need to unleash yourself from your domain in a sense.
Yes,
and look at this from a customer perspective or the usage perspective and say, okay, what would be the overall experience I'm looking for?
Yeah.
And then you will then bring in the different expertise and ask them to not look at this the way they usually do within their domain. That means that, if you traditionally have asked that, okay, if I have a process and the process actually needs to be handed in the hand of a human being, don't think like that. Think that, okay, what is the control? But Now imagine a machine does that. What does it need to change to cater for the machine?
But I think Nima is stumbling on first principles here.
I think so too. But let's just before we...
I'm glad I'm stumbling on first principles here.
No, it's stumbling into a topic we love.
Yeah, okay, that's good.
So we gave an awesome concrete example of something that has turned into a proper value for Swedbank. And you also mentioned a number of other concrete use cases. And if you can, I understand that this is not always easy to talk about publicly, but still, you mentioned a number of other examples like anti-financial crime and cybersecurity. Could you just exemplify them potentially by just trying to describe in a concrete way what are you trying to fight or help with in terms of that? Without going into, you know what I mean. Can you give some concrete example of this is what potentially can happen, and if we can try to prevent that, that's...
Yeah, okay, you could do, when people transact, sending money, receiving money.
Are we talking about AML? Is this where we're going?
Yeah.
AFL or FS,
AFC is finally financial crime, but I think if you're just taking money laundering examples...
AML, anti-money laundering, because this is a big topic that many, including myself, are interested in seeing best ways of doing it.
In anti-money laundering, what typically is about that people use the networks of the bank, banking infrastructure, transactions, account, to make money that has been acquired in an illegal way to make it white. By making it looks like, it came from salary or came from my friend switched it to me or whatever.
But try to explain it in a concrete way. So basically you have a set of transaction in some way and a set of people and companies potentially, right? Entities.
Yeah, so you have a set of you could have, so as an example of what we're looking for is that you could have a set of transactions, and those transactions can occur in normal ways, like when I get my salary. And when I, switch to buy a hot dog, or it could happen in a abnormal way.
Yeah. So you're trying to identify abnormal or fraudulent transactions.
Statistically, we're doing anomaly detections.
Anomaly detection. So there is one anomaly in all of the normal transactions, and AML is about detecting fraudulent transactions, like one particular transaction.
Exactly, and that is like that's exactly it. So that's like looking for a needle in a haystack.
In a haystack problem.
Because you have, imagine like Bank of Us have, I don't know how many, 3 million. We have
per day, right?
We have millions or hundreds of millions of transactions.
Yeah, hundreds of millions of transactions.
Does it mean that that also means that you should be able to find out some kind of a model that is, let's say, anonymized behavioral, right? Because if it's let's say the machine, not a person, in predictive maintenance, you're measuring temperature, pressure, different things, right? And you're looking for anomaly. So the machine is working like this, and suddenly the machine is doing something new, right? And that is the anomaly detection.
Exactly.
So how is that when you have like a
people,
human, right? Because it needs to be regulated on some kind of this is normal and this is not normal.
Yeah. Right? So luckily or unluckily, or I don't know how you will choose it, you of course have historically collected and understand what sort of what sort of abnormal behaviors there could be. Of different patterns.
You need to build up your training set of the anomalies.
Exactly.
What was the profile of the
Exactly. So then you have those cases, and then of course you try to train your models based on these. But then of course you always try to some of the things we do, like trying to understand the relations between entities, like graph analytics or network analytics, because and those are really exciting. One of the use cases I can talk about generally is that. General people switch to each other. So when you look at those networks, you can immediately understand this seems very normal because you don't see any particular concentration. But then sometimes you see, there comes if you then map on, for example, a significant volume of transactions, so one transaction of 1 million SEK switched, or 100,000, but then you see from that comes in from one point. One entity, and then it goes out into 100,000 of 100 SEK each. That sounds strange. What kind of business is that?
I remember from the Spotify days, we had a lot of people tried to game the system, and it was actually surprisingly easy to detect because they actually played the songs exactly 30 seconds because they know they don't get paid until you play a song for 30 seconds. So this kind of bot system, they try to game the system and have.
So you had artists
that
bots.
were all about 31 seconds long, and it was so easy to detect.
Yeah.
And
So that's sort of it. And when you actually plot these kind of things on visually on networks, you see that. And this is the aha moment. You put them in front of people, and it's like even you don't need to be data scientists on this.
I can see that blue dot there.
Yeah, what is that? That was exactly what one of our head of heads said. Well, but that looks very strange. Well, congrats! You identified a probably suspicious activity.
You're a data scientist.
Yeah, exactly.
Manual data scientist.
Yeah, manual data scientist.
But it's so interesting. Then don't be afraid of the visualization part of data and analytics. Sometimes that's even more powerful.
Yeah, you need to be able to tell the story.
Yeah.
Okay, so that was awesome to try to understand from a concrete point of view. What does really anti-financial crime or anti-money laundering
But I think
mean?
there is an unpacking here because how are you doing it, technology-wise?
I'm actually right now sending a message to my wife. So you guys.
Cool.
I'm not coming home tonight.
No, she's like,
too much fun.
She's like, are you on after work? It's like, do you have mask on? Stuff like that. I was like, no, I'm actually on a podcast, and that was one of that was, by the way, a funny story because one of my.
By the way, we take this very seriously.
Yeah,
yes, I know.
Don't laugh.
No, but this is that's good. I actually wrote that everyone seems very healthy here, so it's like.
Yes.
But it was funny because we don't have any after works anymore. I mean, this is.
Are you at after work? You're not.
Yeah, exactly. You're not an after work. So my assistant wrote down and said that can I schedule this thing? But I see you're an after work. I was like, no, I'm not an after work. It says podcast, and I was like, no, but it says after work. I said, no, it says read the entire sentence. He said, oh. So it says like here is the podcast.
It's the name of the podcast.
It's the name of the podcast. I was like, that sounds cool.
So everybody knows. We are not on after work.
Yeah, we're not on after work. No videos and stuff like that. No videos. I mean, I'm up here. This one.
Yeah.
And Henrik, you asked, can you please divulge the exact techniques and code and implementation details? And I guess you cannot, or please, if you can do. But I guess
you probably can't. But could you give us a hint on technically what's behind how you're doing it? I mean, because I know you weren't buying a service. You can buy a service that you can integrate to the bank quite expensively to do AML fraud, detect fraudulent. That this is off the shelf. You can buy to hook in. But you decided not to do that. I mean,
we use multiple of services in house and outside.
Okay, so some kind of service is part of this.
It could be. Can't go into details.
But it also. But have you been able to work in your? How should I put it? Let's not go into detail. But your normal analytical tech stack or the in analytical environments that you have built for other purposes, you've been able to sort of repurpose for this. To some degree.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, essentially, it's not so much of repurposing because you put in the data and it's a classification.
Yeah. So you had tech to do classification that you could use for this purpose.
So we just we trained it on something different. Here you train it on a retail data labeled set.
Yeah.
It's something else that you train it on, and you still ask them to identify.
The time is flying away as well, but we had an awesome concrete example of RPA and how you can help with investment advice and everything, and that was a big success. And you have financial crime and money laundering. Could you just mention briefly, potentially, I guess not, but let's try. If you can mention briefly, concretely and briefly about
You're
what
being grilled.
You're being grilled right now. This is the grilling part,
What is the cybersecurity part? Can you just mention a bit what you're doing in that area?
Nope.
I like it. You know what?
You couldn't be more brief than that.
I love it. Thank you. Let's not go there.
Yeah.
Let's not go. That's the one part. Is I guess not.
Yeah, the cyber guys are really secret. So
no, but one thing that we could talk about. Maybe I'm jumping now, but let's talk about cloud and the use of cloud in banking, or how you've been tackling that and how you see that. Can we go there now? Is that a new topic?
Sure.
So it is very exciting to explore the thinkings around the tech stack what are we doing at Scania? What are we doing in Vattenfall? What are we doing in Swedbank? So could you elaborate on your thinkings around the tech stack in general, or what you've been doing and what your direction is and what your lessons learned are?
I think I don't think it's a big secret, like many different banks, and I think you recently read about SEB's collaboration with Google. And I think we, like many others, are looking into how we can become more cost efficient while getting access to new innovations on technology. And previously you were doing that by buying boxes on-prem, and now you kind of realize that that's not a sustainable model for many different reasons.
You were there, and your big data stack, was that like Horton or Cloudera?
Yeah. It was I think we can tick all of them. The big names you can find, we can probably find in our environment, but we are. I still kind of proud ourselves that we are a hardcore, we are not the drag and drop data scientist. Actually, one of my recruitment requirements is that you need to actually be able to write code.
Nice.
Yeah, so it's going to be, old school back end, all the way, so that's just one of the things. So a lot of Python and Scala and whatever you might come across, which is recently or been used in the past. So that's been our poison. And then, of course, you have all your big data platforms for data harmonizations and all of that kind of things. And you try to do this in some sort of a, Spark engine that allows you to, have multiple distributed systems and all of that kind of capabilities. But now we realize that, okay, really good. We tried it. It worked. But now, given the roadmap, the capabilities, the scale we are out there, there is not that many other options unless you want to continue to invest a lot of money.
So that's okay to actually potentially move to the cloud, even though you have the strict banking regulation in place.
So we are taking steps in that direction. So it's definitely. So we're taking that directions and it's actually moving. Well, as I mentioned, this EAC was a use case in the cloud.
Oh, that's awesome.
And what's your thinking here? Do you think it's going to be multi-cloud, hybrid cloud? Do you think you can standardize?
No, I think it's baby steps for us. I think we will suffice with one cloud and get that up and running. Then we can talk about hybrids.
But I mean, with hybrids, that some things need to stay on-prem.
Probably something moving
jobs.
But
more hybrid than multi-cloud.
Probably more hybrid than multi-cloud. Yeah.
I can just as a bit of a scare, perhaps, for Spotify to move from on-prem to Google Cloud took like 5-6 years, and it's still not finished, I believe. So
that's comforting to hear that. Because I was like, can this really take that many times?
So Spotify could do it in 5 years, then the bank can do it in 2, no problem.
Of course.
Yeah, why not?
Why not?
Yeah.
Cool. If we could move to another topic, I know you're rather interested in leadership, and you mentioned a number of people that you regard as good leaders as well. Micke Björk, or whatever his name was.
Micke Björk,
yeah. Could you just elaborate a bit more? What do you consider good leadership to be?
Wow.
We changed topic.
Yeah, that's a
boom.
365.
A deep one.
Well, it's... I think someone who challenged you to, of course, work outside your comfort zone. Someone who is, I like someone who is progressive in his thinking, so doesn't limit yourself what you have in front of you, but is trying to ask you to then connect it to this moving outside your comfort zone. What do you need to take that extra step? The impossible is nothing. I like that kind of attitude.
Nice.
So that resonates well with me, and so if I connect that is probably one of the key aspects when I try to work with people, and that could then be informal or formal leaderships. So that's one aspect, that progressive thinking and pushing you in a positive way outside of a comfort zone, giving you the means and the support you need to take that step. So not just hey, you go fly, there is no parachutes. Not that kind of thing, but still gives you the support that you need so you can take those steps. The other one is the other one I would say is this communication style and communication and transparency, openness. I think those are things that resonate again with me, and because that's how I would like to drive my own leadership with my own team.
Yeah. So it's something that you like, but also something that you aspire to be that kind of leader.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sounds good.
basically I'm trying to copying what I see is working. Because I think that sort of a leadership has taken us far, and that's something I believe we still need to have in to tackle all the tremendous challenges we have ahead of us.
That's great.
Yeah, it's a tough topic, and we just have like 10-12 minutes left. So, but it's I think a very interesting one, and to make a company work, you need to have great leaders as well, and being able to push, promote, and guide and lead people is super important, right?
Especially, I mean, when you feel that there is someone who trusts in your vision, because I mean, Mickey didn't know me, but he kind of I felt that comfort and that trust early on in your ability. I guess he felt somewhere that I could, do this, and then he let me go there. And I think that trust becomes very important, especially in the domain we are in, because 7 or 8 years ago when we started down that journey together with him, there was, we didn't talk about AI or data science, but I think he understood this long-term vision and perspective that I think there is something we can do together here in this data area. So, okay, I don't have all the pictures, but I understand, foggy picture that what do you need to take there, to go there, and giving these you means to take their journey.
But good leadership now, if we frame it, we're still on the same topic, what is good leadership, but we now peel the onion and say, what is good leadership, or are there specific traits that becomes more highlighted to succeed with data and AI? And to put it even more bluntly, when you're not data native, when you're sort of you have a proud history that is analog. So is it leadership traits that even rises as more critical in your opinion? Because those that you highlighted, I think, are really
exactly.
important.
I think the whole ability to think beyond the box, this progressive thinking.
I would say that is a leadership trait, not only as a good leader, but especially.
Especially if you want to embark on new areas, on uncharted, territories.
Territory.
First principle thinking, once again. Cool. I'd love to move into some more philosophical, long-term thinking kind of topics.
But the last 5 minutes, now we get into the philosophy.
No, we're gonna run over. I think I want to go philosophical, but I really, I think it's quite amazing to reflect a little bit about Swedbank as a company. When was Swedbank formed? It's a 200-year-old company.
It's 200 years ago.
Yeah. And I think it is a little bit like going down a rabbit hole based on what is good leadership. My experience has been a lot that tackling to become data and AI ready, you can do it in one way if you're a startup or if you're in a digital native environment. But when you have a very proud history and you have a way to do things that has made you very successful, what is your lessons learned, or is it different, you think, or do you need to think differently to drive change or to drive adoption or to get the ball moving when you have a proud history? Is it good or is it bad? Is it hindering? I'm just thinking loud what from my experience is that not everybody's data scientist and knows what we are talking about. They have other skills. So any views on that, what it means to drive innovation and especially data and AI innovation in a company that has a lot.
I actually made a slide not that while ago where I said that where we come from is a significant competitive advantage where we're heading. So, and where we come from is our history and our tradition.
Yeah, and how is that elaborate? I love it.
So essentially, the whole idea of Swedbank was formed around the idea of providing, financial services, making the common person succeed with his endeavors. Whether that is, I think there was a small girl who deposited a few, I don't know what equivalent to 200 years ago was, but anyway, that small girl and deposited some money. And she had a vision with that money. She wanted to do something with that money. She wanted to save it. She wanted to, buy candy for some reasons. I don't know exactly. But I think the whole idea of being there to enable other people to grow, it's something that is still valid today, but now in a digital context, with new technology added on top of it to achieve the same goal.
So you have the proper values that you can stick to, and it still is valid today. In some sense?
I think I love our values. Actually, I read so many corporate.
But does it mean you need to connect now with your data and AI strategy, whatever you want to do, back to the core values? Is that the formula?
And the core values is open, simple, and caring. So what we actually have done within our teams, we've asked the strategy to be translated from open, simple, and caring. So our agile teams. Our APOs are sitting, and so they have stated their strategy based on the open, simple, and caring. So whenever we develop code, what does it mean from an open, simple, and caring? Whenever we collaborate, what does it mean from an open, simple, and caring?
That's awesome. But if you take, I think Google is famous for saying, we are, Google is a big enterprise company. It hasn't the long history that Swedbank has, but it's a big enterprise. And they don't fear that much other enterprises. What they do fear is small startups that come up with some very novel, innovative ideas that they potentially can't really transform into themselves. What would you say Swedbank fear the most? Is it other big banks, or is it small micro banks or startups coming up with other financial, thinking Klarna or whatever, kind of solutions? What's you think the Swedbank's potential fear would be?
I honestly don't think it's neither of those two. It's not the fear of another competitor or the fear of Klarna or Prague. I think it would be of losing the trust of our customers.
So you have losing the trust of the customer. Interesting.
But what do you think the trust would come from? We've seen the young people trusting, perhaps in a surprisingly confident way, social networks and whatnot. Do you think, we know Facebook was planning to open their own currency and have Libra and whatnot.
But they haven't.
No. But do you think that's a potential, scare that the big tech companies could come into the banking industry? Perhaps Tesla, as you have one, they could open their own banks and insurance businesses.
I don't want to sound pretentious in any way, but no, I don't think. I used to be one of the guys who were talking about these different scenarios, but what we see now is particularly in this pandemic, where you need to go back to your roots again, to the core values. You want to find a trusted partner, someone who could be there both in nöd och lust. So we are there. We're not going to charge you 275% interest rates just because it's pandemic right now. So and now we see actually in our customer feedbacks and so on, astonishingly large number of young customers coming to us because we can actually be there and provide that sound and sustainable advice to you.
But so the bottom line.
If you see it, what banks is the main selling point is trust. Because if I don't trust you, I will not save my money with you. So I think it's a if you're talking about first principles, etc., that is the main sales point here.
So
and
because
it permeates,
because
it's very simple as well.
But it permeates also how you need to think about change and how you need to go about AI. With that beacon in front of you.
What a nice final word I was going to say, but that means it right. Exactly. Banking is trust. AI is trust.
But maybe to rephrase your question, so what would be, for example, if we look at banking in 2030, how this will look like from Nima's perspective?
Good question.
Yeah,
but that is what you are actually aiming at, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So because it's so it doesn't, we do not have to talk about competitors and etc. But actually, what we are trying to do with this podcast is actually to find, try to just picture some, how this will look like in 10 years, because my kids are going to be your customers, right? At that point of time,
really hope so.
Yeah, of course, no problem. The trust is what is needed. But they are actually mobile-oriented people. Yeah. They think differently. Really, they think differently. It's not morally, ethically, how they address situations. They think differently, right? So everything will change.
Yeah, everything will change, but something will remain. And I think trust will remain. Even in a highly more competitive environment where you can switch services by a click of button, or if there is some sort of an AGI selecting those services for you, or where would you go you would go somewhere where you feel trusted, right? You will go something where you feel there is more, your moral beacon is pointing in that direction. I hope that we can be that.
But would you you're dodging a little bit the bullet. So banking in 2030.
No, I think essentially what we need to do, of course, we will adapt our services even more to the digital interfaces, and of course we will introduce more AIs in providing more personalized, relevant user experience, in the context. Hopefully by that we have this real time, or less than 1 second recommendations for you. But I think also it's gonna be even more embedded in your daily life, in the sense that in a way that you're not sensing it.
The habit.
We seem like seamless integrations of payment services coming into your ecosystem.
Seamless banking.
Yeah, I mean you probably are doing a lot of you're using a lot of financial services, but you don't really recognize it's a bank. That is also, of course, a big challenge, because what happens is that you're eroding your brand, right? Because your brand is what the customer sees and experiences as a bank. When that becomes so embedded into other services that you don't really understand the distinguishing between what was that, that virtual reality world I was in and out and paid for something, was that actually a banking service? So it's an opportunity from a sense that you become more integrated into services, and of course you have more touch points, you understand more, and you can provide more relevant services. But how do you maintain the key relationship?
That's a good one.
That is actually a very good one.
I like that. Seamless banking, you will be banking will be embedded, like financial transaction will take place as part of the transaction seamlessly. At the same time, we want to choose a bank that we trust, but I don't even know what bank did the service.
How do you trust someone you don't see?
Exactly. So your core value is sound, but will it be relevant when we don't even know it's there?
So
good one.
Nice.
Thinking about the future a bit, and we can see so many different, potential services. I actually is a customer to Swedbank myself. At least my company is, and use them, and they have, the bookkeeping functionality and integration with SpeedLedger and so many things that I think is so useful when you start to have this kind of close integration with the bank, and it's really useful. But if you were to make some predictions about the future, predictions are always hard, especially about the future. But what do you see coming up? Is it something you can share potentially? This is something that I predict that in coming years, this will be a way to have this kind of seamless banking that will be really positive change for people.
Technologically wise, or
Service?
Or is it news, or it's like a service, or what? What do you?
For me, exactly. There are other banks that, for example, provide they have a wallet service. They provide like an overview, analytics for users. They provide some kind of services. And
PFM solutions, personal finance management.
And they can
AI guided investment. You should invest in this.
No, but I got actually.
It is true, actually. Avanza is giving you a portfolio. What is almost like a.
But that's the biggest marketing things in the world. The portfolio theory has been the same portfolio theory you've had since the 1950s. So there is no really super AI behind it. That's the same guy who won the Nobel Prize in the 50s. That we've just put a nice digital wrapper on it.
Yes,
but
the wrapper is there.
Yeah, I know the wrapper is there.
The wrapper is there. That is
it's a bunch of good GUI guys.
Yeah, exactly.
but just to give an example then, and why I'm missing a number of things from banks today.
Yeah.
And one of the things, coming from, Spotify and the music industry and recommender systems that work really well there, and people are, considering them to be mainstream functionality and a product that they have. Why don't we have a good recommendation system for stocks, funds, and things like that? Why doesn't it exist? I think for me it would be perfect for me if I like these kind of other stocks and I get recommendations saying, you should probably invest in this. And for me, from a technical point of view, it would be easy to build as well. I can't see why doesn't that exist.
But they have it in Avanza. That is what we were talking about.
I'm speaking about the Swedbank now.
Okay.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think
I haven't seen even an Avanza. I have Avanza as well, but I
actually, if you go to the mobile, you have the swipe, for example, like actions to do.
I think we actually have it, but we don't talk about it so openly in the sense that, when you look at the stock, you can also see that below the line, you could see it also that, hey, those who also have this, this also have these other additional 3 stocks. So it's a more of a social nudging, because I think there is a lot of regulations as to, it's not a given thing that if you have Tesla as a stock that you should also have, I don't know. Yeah. I was going to say
Polestar.
Yeah.
No,
that's not. I mean, that's not going to happen, right? Because even though they look the same as electrical car, they financially, from an advice perspective, they are regulated that maybe there is a P&L looks different.
Yeah.
So there's a bit of more difficulty behind that.
It needs to have a statement as well, and I think there is that is basically, this is not something that you should take. You should, of course, still do a due diligence and research on those things, because on the end is like it just doesn't. What was your story about the recommendation that the people that were listening to Danish music, so they got the so the recommendation can go wrong as well, right?
I want to go down that rabbit hole, but I can share it.
But I will certainly make sure to bring that up to the product development area that Anders wants.
Anders wants.
From a technical point of view, if I just had a data, I could build it for
Anders needs
2
to commit
hours
as well for 1 million investment.
But I mean, I think you are limiting yourself. It's actually much simpler to build. It is simpler to build stock recommendations, but it's much more harder to build general banking services, because the products and services within banks are very, very different from each other. So it's not like, and it's not like, okay, hey, mortgage is mortgage. Would you like to recommend the system for mortgage? Why?
No, but if you at least take like funds already, I mean, everyone is doing, a lot of people are doing it, and I don't really see as long as it's a recommendation and not an automated decision made for you, the level of harm is significantly reduced, right? Because it is a recommendation. You always have the final say.
Yeah, right? But do you understand that, or can you recognize that recommendation can be interpreted as many different things?
Yes, I agree with him actually.
Because if you say recommendation, well, I mean, if the bank recommends, then of course it's a sure given advice.
Who takes the blame if something goes wrong?
Yeah.
I think
and
that
of course,
everyone makes the choice. But
isn't giving stock recommendation one of the most regulated parts of banking, and also one of the most highly certified parts of, if to work as to recommend funds or whatever like that? You have your certification, you have your training. So this is this whole apparatus that goes into becoming one of those guys who can sit on the floor and do this work. So I would say there's a lot of legal red tape around this.
I'm sure it is, but still, I
layers.
would trust so much more an AI system that I know how it works and have all the data available that can process that much, much more efficiently than any possible human can do. So when I'm sitting with a bank, a human person that's going to advise me in what stocks I'm going to buy,
You're more scared.
I would not trust that person at all.
I understand, and I think we are going in that direction, and we will eventually be there. Maybe that's a 2030 vision that you have your AGI standing and giving you recommendations.
Well, not AGI, but at least use
RPA.
Yeah, but I mean, any sort of there will be some sort of a smarter intelligence recommending you that part. But I think the road there still will probably be some sort of a hybrid setup where you have nudging or you have augmentation as a first step.
Yeah. I mean, of course, it shouldn't be automated. It should be a recommender system. And for me,
but it's certainly lots easier to recommend, Guns N' Roses versus recommending,
You can get a lot of shit for that. So just comment on what's going on.
The recommendation engine gone wrong. Please tell us. That's a good.
So just to keep it
story.
brief. So we got a lot of complaints, in Spotify at some point, and some Swedish people were saying, I get recommended Danish rap music, and why the F is I get recommended? I hate Danish music and I hate rap music. How can I get recommended Danish rap music? And then this was such a big problem, so they had to look into this a bit more and try to understand, how can this be a recommendation that they give to some people? And then they could find this kind of problem that we had an asymmetry between people. So perhaps, I'm not saying this is the case, I'm just saying like an hypothesis is that it's an hypothesis that potentially Danish people like Swedish music more than Swedish people like Danish music in general. And potentially that causes a problem with the algorithm, because the algorithm assumes a symmetrical relationship between people.
Oh, okay.
So the Danish guys love Swedish rap music. So
therefore needs a Swedish. guy needs also now.
Yeah, I don't know. It was a clear problem of the recommender system.
Obviously.
Anders putting Lasse Stefans to everybody recommending.
Yes, exactly.
It's not earth-shattering in this case, but it could be a little bit worse if that happened in
I take all my saving pensions and yeah.
Okay, good. So
it's a bit higher impact for sure.
Let's do that quickly.
Should we end
Yes,
off?
yeah.
Okay, cool. Do you want to do it? Or,
Yeah, I mean, like, so we have a couple of classical ending note questions. So the first one, Nima, what is next in your life, or what is sort of up now that is sort of exciting or around the corner?
Personally or business? Yeah,
personally or business.
Personally, I'm looking forward to the summer and going boating.
Yes.
So that I'm looking forward to, and spending some times with the kids building a ninja rope or setting up a ninja rope and trying to climb the ninja rope with the kids.
Yeah, and
nice.
And also, I need to ask you as an old soccer player, it sounded. I think you told me earlier your son just started playing soccer.
Yeah, yesterday.
So you're going to be a soccer dad properly now.
I'm actually a trainer.
Soccer dad properly.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
So you're looking forward to your training career.
Yes, of course. That's going to come back. And actually, I train both my daughter and my son. So yeah.
But is that starting now? So is your training career starting this year?
Yeah.
I love
coming at you.
I had the training career and I gave it up.
Yeah, we'll see how sustainable that will be.
Fantastic. That's awesome. And then the last question. Who would you want to listen to or see on this podcast? Do you have any recommendations of exciting, good, fun people, interesting people that you could recommend us to have on this show?
Anyone or
anyone? Yeah.
Someone that actually could come physically to the show.
Okay.
As well.
Physically would be good.
Stefan Löfven.
We set the standards high. Yeah, we try. We aim for that.
Season 3, here we come.
Season 3, maybe we can get it.
Yeah.
So,
Anything specifically that you're interested in to hear from him?
Honestly, I think I would like you to try to see if you can invite our chairman, Göran Persson.
yeah.
Oh, yeah.
It's a very brilliant.
We would love to.
Yeah, brilliant man.
Yeah.
I mean, everyone know Göran Persson, but I think in the context of what he's doing right now, the support he's providing, and of course also the fact that has this ability to see the really bigger picture and put that in a social context, which we have touched upon a couple of times here. It could be interesting.
We shoot for
We would love to.
That would be fantastic, of course.
Good suggestion. I like it.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I don't know. I think it's time for the after work. if the wife lets you.
Yeah, no. I mean, I've seen like 25 messages.
Anyway, guys, thank you, Nima. Thank you a lot. I think that was an amazing, good energy.
Yeah, I mean, it was awesome being here. I mean, I have not had that much fun playing in a serious podcast like this. So I really appreciate it. And I've by distance seen you, known you, interacted with you, but I think it's always much more rewarding.
Yeah.
To sit there and
Yeah.
like meeting with a good bunch of people and friends and talk.
Yeah.
So thank you for inviting me.
Yeah,
Thank you
thanks
for
for
being
coming,
here.
Nima. Thank you.